Star Ocean is one of Square Enix's longest running series, with the first game released for the Super Nintendo way back in 1996. I was like 5, so I never played it, and unfortunately the first game never made its way outside of Japan until it received a PSP version in 2008. But the game's PlayStation 1 sequel, released in 1998, did get an English version released, and well, I actually did have a copy of that one. Yeah, I must have bought it like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. I don't even know. But it was one of those games that I checked out for like 5, maybe 10-ish hours and then put it down for whatever reason. Looking back, I think it might have been because of the voice acting, or I don't know, something about it just didn't pull me in. Well, fast forward to November of last year, and I was looking for something to play on stream, something a little old school, but maybe not too retro, and that's when I stumbled upon the trailer for Star Ocean Second Story R, and I instantly knew this was something I needed to play. This new remake looks absolutely gorgeous, and I don't think I really gave the original a fair shot, so figured what the heck, let's give it another go. And after just recently beating the game on stream, yeah, I loved it. This is a pretty traditional JRPG, and yes, it's a remake, but I think its DNA is fully PlayStation 1. And for me, that only made the experience even more lovable. This game is just drenched in retro charm, and it was just really fun as hell. So let's dig in a little deeper into some of the details. So for starters, the graphics have all been touched up considerably, and I was completely blown away by the gorgeous visual style that this new 2D, 3D presentation provides. HD 2D, or whatever you want to call it, Star Ocean just looks so beautiful. For the first couple hours, okay, maybe like half of the game, I couldn't stop admiring the visuals. Now, I know not everyone enjoys this style, but this has got to be one of the best looking games in this genre. Now, admittedly, I haven't played a ton of games in this style, but like Octopath Traveler didn't look nearly as cool to me. Or maybe it's just having that original reference point and seeing how they've recreated these maps from the PlayStation 1. I don't know, it's just such a captivating looking game. On a side note, what the fuck happened to the Dragon Quest III remake? That's been like radio static for like 3 years now. But okay, so after some of that initial wow factor of the graphic style had worn off, I was left with an extremely enjoyable 90s RPG with a simple and effective battle system, tons of crafting, customization, and a whole lot of replayability. Second Story R is easily one of the most fun games that I played from 2023, and if you love old school JRPGs, I think there's a good chance this will be right up your alley. The battle system is quick and it's fun. Maybe a little too on the simple side, but it's paired with a gear and leveling system that almost begs you to abuse it. The combat plays out in real time, so you'll need to control one party member while you leave the other party members to AI, which usually do a pretty good job. Personally, I like playing as the melee fighter the best, but you can still input spell commands for your other characters, which you'll likely need to do if you want to keep your party alive, especially in the later levels, which require quite a bit more menu navigating to survive. I do find that the enemy AI does a pretty good job here as well, assuming you're not completely wrecking them. Enemies will run away from the front lines and try to interrupt your spellcasters, so you gotta pay attention to that, especially when you're planning on sending out a big healing spell or whatnot. Now, the combat system also has a break gauge that should feel right at home if you're a Final Fantasy fan, and you'll find different abilities that excel at focusing on break damage or HP damage. You're able to map 4 of these abilities to run at any time, along with your basic attack combo. So it's pretty straightforward, and it's not incredibly complex, but I do like it. The combat kind of reminds me of like the Tales series or something like that. Now, one thing that the game does that I feel like sets it apart from a lot of its contemporaries is the game's multi-layered skill system, which enables you to do all kinds of cool things in and outside of battle. Say, for example, you level up a few characters with the animal handling trait. Eventually, you'll be able to use Find Familiar, which will call in a carrier pigeon, in which you can buy healing items from them when you're still in a dungeon. Or let's say you choose to level up music with a few different characters, so you can then perform songs to temporarily increase your stats. There's a ton of interesting things to unlock, from old classics like fishing and cooking and pickpocketing and smithing, to more in-game utilities like changing the enemy encounter rate, or even training your characters by lowering their stats but increasing their experience gained in combat. And I'm just breezing through this, there's a lot to go over. By the late game, you can absolutely use all of these to overpower yourself. Although on my first playthrough, I didn't indulge too deeply into some of the really game-breaking mechanics. Speaking of playthroughs, this is a game designed to be enjoyed multiple times. Your first in-game decision will be picking between the two protagonists, Claude and Reyna, and they each have their own stories despite crossing over throughout the majority of the game. I picked Claude. The year is SD366. Or is it SD366? I don't know. The year is SD366. Claude is from Earth and the son of Ronix, the captain of the starship Calnus, and also one of the protagonists from the first game. He's also got one of the weakest voice performances in the game, and we'll go back to that later, but I mean, seriously, just listen to this guy.
No, sir. None of the wavelengths are showing any response. The field resembles a magnetic energy field somewhat, but its exact nature is still uncertain at the moment.
Science officer. Wow. The voice acting is... alright.
So it's possible that it's absorbing all the waves from the sensors. Alright?
What the hell were they thinking with this? Anyway, Claude is struggling to find his place in space, his space place, if you will, and feeling pressured to follow in his father's footsteps. He's your typical teenager, not sure of their place in space. When he and his father's crew are out on a mission, he kinda stupidly ends up teleporting himself to this completely different world of Expel, where he meets a mysterious girl with magical abilities, and that's our other girl, Reyna. And I love these two. They're such a funny pair of dorky 90s anime tropes that I couldn't help myself but fall for their little crushy type thing they got going on here. Actually, that's one of my favorite aspects of the game. It feels very influenced by those old 90s, mid-90s anime, and I literally grew up on that shit. The story is somewhat typical RPG stuff, and while it might not have the same depth to it as Square's other PlayStation 1 space RPG, Xenogears, it also doesn't take itself nearly as seriously as something like that either. New to this mysterious world of Expel, Claude gets mistaken to be a fated legendary warrior because of his cool space gun. But as he tries to work his way through this misunderstanding, ultimately his goal is just to return home, return to Earth. But in a world where no one's heard of Earth, that's not going to be an easy task. Alongside the journey, Claude and Reyna will encounter various recruitable party members, a few being exclusive to each route. And this is where a lot of the fun comes from. There are a total of 13 characters with a max of 8 for your party, so you'll have to make some tough decisions in picking characters. I did this blind, and I ended up enjoying the characters I picked for the most part, but I definitely want to see some of the ones I missed out on, such as this badass, edgy sword guy, Diaz, who's only available in Reyna's route. And as you recruit a full team, you'll find a ton of social interactions to enjoy with your party members. It kind of reminds me of the party talk system in Dragon Quest, but maybe a little more complicated. In Star Ocean, it's called PA events, where you are in a town or a city or whatever. You can split up the group and then let the characters go off on their own. This is where you'll find some extra scenes and dialogue with each party member. These scenes, aside from being sweet little additions to the story, also help build up friendship points between the characters that affect the game's many different endings. The cast that you can recruit from has a nice variety of stories that you can follow, but I accidentally went with mostly just the cute girls. Oops. That's not to say I just chased the cute girls. I also loved Ashton, who is this unfortunate soul who ends up with 2 dragon heads attached to his upper body. His situation is just so silly, and I feel so bad because I wasn't able to find a cure for him. I don't know if you can cure him or not. Leon was this bratty little kid who I picked up, but even he had some pretty cute scenes once he grew more accustomed to the party. But of course, I guess my favorite would probably have to be that witchy girl Celine, who maybe overstayed her usefulness in my party in the late game, but you know what? I don't care. She's still top waifu in my playthrough. In fact, I was trying so hard to steer my way back to the traditional Claude and Reyna ending, because I had her in my party for way too long, and I don't know, her and Claude were just getting along quite well. And yeah, so endings. I brought this up earlier, but there are a lot of different endings. 99 to be exact, and those aren't full-on endings, more like it's 99 scenes that have potential to be unlocked throughout the game's various social mechanics. So it's not like you just get one scene. You kind of get a combination of many of them. And as for those completionists out there, don't worry. What I'm saying is you don't have to beat the game 99 times to see everything. Now, as for the game's sound department, okay, this is where my review is a little bit flawed, but not entirely. Hear me out. So, when I was streaming the game, I was thoroughly enjoying this new remixed soundtrack, but this shit kept getting my streams flagged for copyright on the music. And it was because of the damn battle music at that. So luckily the game does include an option to switch over to the original soundtrack, and that solved my issues entirely. Streaming on YouTube can be really annoying, guys, especially when it comes to claims on the music. Look, I don't even make money from my streams, but I do think it affects the stream's visibility, and that somewhat matters to me. Anyway, sorry, you're probably not here to listen to me complain about YouTube, but my point is that I had to switch back to the original soundtrack. But because that's what I was exposed to, I ended up thinking it holds up really well. And from what I did hear of the new orchestrated versions as well, they sound great too. I think the music for the towns especially just have this perfect, chill, relaxing sound to them. It just makes for the perfect vibe to go item shopping or do some PA events. Overall, I've really got nothing much but praise for the game, and that's because it really just hits so many things I love. Yes, this is a PlayStation 1 game underneath its beautiful recreation, and it's a little on the simple side, but I think it's still a super charming experience. Especially if you've got a soft spot for the 90s anime vibes. I mean, honestly, the only real negative I've got here is that voice acting. At least for the English dub, it's the same as the PSP version of the game, and while most of the time the voice actors get the job done, sometimes it's really rough. Like, so rough. Like steel wool toilet paper rough. While I do think that the main cast is enjoyable, you can really tell they didn't put much effort into the side characters and the NPCs, but I'll still take it as an improvement over the PlayStation 1 version, and I genuinely enjoyed Claude and his aloof dumb guy energy, and I think Reina did a great job at coming across as this sweet magical girl. So yeah, if you are a fan of old school RPGs and looking for something familiar but maybe a little different, I really can't recommend this one enough. This game seemingly came out of nowhere for me, and I was pleasantly surprised. I really don't know much about Star Ocean in general, but I'm looking forward to not only replaying this game, but also checking out some of the other Star Ocean games. Which one should I check out next? Well, you guys can let me know, and hey, if you want, consider sticking around for more videos about RPGs, Final Fantasy, Kingdom Hearts, all kinds of stuff like that. See ya!